The earliest surviving reference to the Zozo case appears in a municipal incident log dated February 3, 2009, catalogued under a routine welfare check. There is nothing remarkable about the initial entry. A patrol unit was dispatched at 7:42 p.m. to a duplex on the outskirts of Topeka, Kansas, following a neighbor's complaint about persistent banging sounds coming from the shared wall. The officer noted intermittent impact noises, possibly furniture being moved, and cleared the call within 12 minutes. No follow-up was scheduled. At that point, no ecclesiastical authority was involved. No medical alerts had been triggered. The name Zozo does not appear anywhere in the documentation from that week.
Listen to me, this is far more serious than you think.
Megan L.
We have to act now
was
before it's too
27
late.
years old at the time. She worked as a transcriptionist for a regional insurance firm, mostly remote, averaging 8 to 10 hours a day at her home desk. Her medical history was unremarkable. Mild anemia diagnosed in college, seasonal allergies, no psychiatric admissions, no substance abuse.
I will.
She lived alone.
What was
The
that?
duplex
I heard
had been
something.
built in
This isn't right.
1978.
I have to see.
Slab
God, help me.
foundation,
What is happening?
no basement. Shared attic space separated by chicken wire and insulation. According to her own statement, given later under recorded interview, the first anomaly occurred on January 29, 2009, at approximately 11:56 p.m. She described it not as fear, but as interruption. I was doing what I always did, sitting at the table. I had a candle because the overhead light flickered. The planchette moved before I even asked anything. I thought my fingers slipped. This statement refers to a wooden talking board purchased online 3 days earlier. Transaction records confirm the delivery date as January 26, 2009, signed for at 2:13 p.m. The board was mass-produced, commercially sold, with no modifications noted at purchase. Pine frame, alphabet arranged in 2 arcs, numbers 1 through 9 in a straight line, and a crescent-shaped planchette with a circular viewing aperture. There is no evidence at this stage that Megan believed in possession, curses, or folklore entities. In a later deposition, she described the purchase as a joke and a way to pass time during winter. On January 30th, she reported difficulty sleeping. Her phone data shows screen activity until 3:08 a.m., followed by a brief emergency call attempt at 3:14 a.m. that was disconnected before routing. No audio was captured. At 6:41 a.m., she texted her sister, "Didn't sleep. Felt like someone was standing in the hallway." That day, she attended a routine virtual meeting at 10 a.m. Colleagues later described her speech as slowed, with several instances of word substitution. One coworker noted she said, "north," when she meant next, then corrected herself after a pause of approximately 5 seconds. The meeting recording confirms this hesitation. On February 1st, at 9:22 p.m., Megan presented at Stormont Vale Hospital's emergency department. Triage notes list her chief complaints as palpitations, nausea, and pressure sensation in ears. Her vitals were mostly within normal range, except for a recorded skin temperature of 94.1 degrees Fahrenheit on the left forearm. The nurse annotated this as possible faulty probe. A repeat reading on the right arm showed 97.8 degrees Fahrenheit. A basic metabolic panel was ordered. All values fell within expected parameters. Toxicology screening returned negative. She was administered 4 milligrams ondansetron for nausea and discharged at 11:47 p.m. with instructions to follow up with primary care. During that visit, Megan mentioned hearing a low vibration at night, described as like a phone on silent mode, but coming from the walls. No auditory hallucinations were formally diagnosed. The attending physician marked the note as anxiety-related somatic complaint. On February 2nd, the banging sounds resumed. This time, the neighbor recorded audio through the shared wall. The file, later entered into evidence, contains irregular impacts spaced between 6 and 13 seconds apart, followed by a prolonged scraping noise lasting approximately 22 seconds. Acoustic analysis conducted months later identified the scraping as consistent with fingernails dragged across unfinished wood. At 1:03 a.m., Megan called 911. The dispatcher transcript records her breathing as rapid but controlled. Dispatcher: "What is your emergency?" Megan: There's something. It keeps answering me. I didn't ask it to. When prompted for clarification, she went silent for 11 seconds, then said, "It says its name over and over." The call ended abruptly at 1:05 a.m. Officers arrived at 1:19 a.m. The interior of the duplex showed no signs of forced entry. Furniture was undisturbed. The talking board was found on the kitchen table.
Listen to me,
Candle
this is
wax
far more
pooled
serious
at
than
3
you think.
corners.
We have to act
Photographs
now
taken
before
at the
it's too
scene
late.
show letters smeared with a residue later identified as paraffin mixed with human skin oils. In her written statement that night, Megan noted that the planchette would not leave the Z and O area. She wrote the letters ZO repeatedly in the margin, then crossed them out. At the bottom of the page, she added,
What was that?
"It
I
won't
heard
stop
something.
saying it."
This isn't
The
right. I have
officers
to see.
advised her to
God, help me.
discontinue
What is
use of the
happening?
board and left at 2:02 a.m. On February 3rd, Megan failed to report to work. At 10:11 a.m., her sister requested a wellness check. This produced the previously mentioned patrol visit. The officer reported hearing soft rhythmic tapping from inside the unit before knocking. Megan answered after 45 seconds. She appeared pale with visible ecchymosis on both wrists. Photographs taken later show the bruising was circumferential, evenly spaced, consistent with grip marks. Megan denied any self-harm or accidental injury. She stated she woke up with them. At 3:37 p.m., she was admitted voluntarily to the psychiatric observation unit following complaints of auditory disturbances. During intake, she corrected the attending nurse twice when asked her name, insisting briefly that her name was not right anymore. She was administered 1 milligram lorazepam for agitation. Over the next 12 hours, monitoring equipment recorded unexplained fluctuations in room temperature. The thermostat log shows a drop from 71 degrees Fahrenheit to 64 degrees Fahrenheit at 2:58 a.m., with no HVAC activation. Maintenance later found the system functioning normally. At 3:14 a.m., a nurse documented Megan speaking aloud while alone. The audio recording captures her saying, "You said you'd stop if I didn't say it." When asked who she was speaking to, she replied, "The name, the one that comes when you hear it." This is the first documented verbal reference aligning with the Zozo designation, though she did not articulate it clearly at that time. The phonetic transcription in the log reads, Zozo, or Zozo. Psychiatric evaluation the following morning concluded with a provisional diagnosis of acute stress reaction with dissociative features. Antipsychotic medication was considered but deferred due to the absence of prior psychiatric history and the atypical presentation. She was discharged on February 4th at 6:20 p.m., with instructions to avoid stressors and follow up outpatient. The records end here for this phase of the case. No priest had yet been consulted. No forensic team had searched the structure. The talking board was returned to the residence in a sealed evidence bag, marked non-hazardous personal property. The name, whatever it was, had already been heard. On February 6, 2009, at 8:09 a.m., Megan's sister entered the duplex using a spare key. She later stated the interior smelled wrong, specifying an odor she compared to wet pennies and burnt matches. Environmental testing conducted weeks later would describe a transient increase in airborne ozone, but at the time, no measurements were taken. Megan was found seated at the kitchen table, hands flat on the surface, palms down. She was awake, responsive, and able to state the date correctly. Her speech was monotone. When asked why she had not answered calls the previous night, she said, "It was loud again. After midnight, it gets loud." A physical examination performed later that morning by her primary care physician noted new bruising along the anterior tibial region of both legs. The bruises appeared in linear pairs, parallel, each line approximately 4.2 centimeters apart. The coloration suggested the injuries were less than 12 hours old. Megan denied falling or striking any object. At 10:47 a.m., she produced the talking board from beneath the sink, wrapped in a towel that showed circular stains. Laboratory analysis would later identify the stains as a mixture of candle wax, saliva, and loam soil containing high iron content. No soil of that composition was present in the yard or immediate surroundings of the duplex. When questioned about the soil, Megan responded, "It asked for it." This statement prompted her sister to contact local clergy. The first individual to arrive was Father Thomas R.,
Listen to me,
an
this is
associate
far more
priest from
serious than you
St.
think.
Matthew's Parish,
We have to
who
act now
documented
before
his
it's too
visit
late.
in a personal pastoral log later submitted to diocesan archives. His entry is dated February 6, 2009, 2:30 p.m. Subject reports auditory disturbances linked to a spirit board. No overt
can't do
blasphemy
this.
or aversion to sacred
have to.
objects.
Then help me
House
stand.
atmosphere unsettled. Temperature
What was that? I heard
variance
something.
noticeable.
This isn't right.
Floor
I have to
cold
see.
through shoes.
God help me. What is
Father
happening?
Thomas conducted a brief blessing of the residents. During this, he noted that the kitchen candle, unlit at the time, began to deform, softening along one edge despite ambient temperatures recorded at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. No ignition source was identified. The blessing concluded at 2:52 p.m. Father Thomas advised disposal of the board and recommended psychological care. He did not initiate a formal inquiry. That evening at 11:18 p.m., Megan's phone recorded a voice memo, apparently activated unintentionally. The audio is low quality, but forensic enhancement later isolated a repeated syllabic utterance occurring beneath Megan's own voice. The syllables are consistent with zo or so, repeated at irregular intervals. Megan can be heard whispering, "I didn't say it. You did." At 12:04 a.m., neighbors again reported impact sounds. This time, responding officers noted visible damage. Shallow gouges along the interior hallway doorframe, each approximately 3 millimeters deep, clustered at heights ranging from 4 to 5 feet above the floor. The pattern suggested repeated contact by a narrow, rigid object, but no such object was found. Megan was transported back to Stormont Vale at 12:41 a.m. During intake, her core body temperature measured 95.6 degrees Fahrenheit. She complained of intense pressure behind the eyes and a metallic taste. Blood work revealed elevated creatine kinase levels, suggesting muscle trauma inconsistent with reported activity. At 3:02 a.m., security cameras in the psychiatric wing captured Megan standing beside her bed, facing the wall, motionless for 7 minutes. When approached by staff, she said, "It's under the house. That's where it was put." This prompted a more thorough examination of the property on February 7th. With Megan's consent, local police conducted a welfare-related search focused on structural hazards. During this inspection, officers discovered a loose section of vinyl flooring beneath the kitchen table. Underneath was a narrow cut in the concrete slab, sealed with wax. The wax plug was irregular, layered in 3 distinct pores. Embedded within the top layer were strands of human hair, later identified through mitochondrial DNA as not belonging to Megan or her sister. The hair showed signs of thermal exposure but was not burned. When the wax was removed, officers uncovered a shallow cavity containing a folded cloth bundle. Inside were the following items, catalogued at 9:36 a.m. A small glass vial containing grave soil mixed with ash. Soil analysis identified the presence of human bone fragments consistent with cremated remains. A slip of parchment paper bearing a handwritten name, Megan L. The ink was iron gall, a formulation uncommon in modern writing instruments. A crude sigil drawn in charcoal and animal fat, composed of intersecting angles forming a distorted heptagram. The geometry did not match known ceremonial magic diagrams documented in standard grimoires, but showed repeated emphasis on mirrored strokes. A second name etched repeatedly into the parchment margin. The letters were uneven, pressed hard enough to score the surface. The name read, Zozo. The discovery triggered a formal evidence chain. Photographs were taken. Samples were bagged. The items were transferred to the county forensic lab by 11:02 a.m. When informed of the find, Megan became visibly distressed. According to the attending nurse's notes, she began repeating, "I never wrote it first. It came when I heard it." She then requested pen and paper. When given them, she drew the same sigil found beneath the floor, completing it in under 15 seconds without reference. At 1:44 p.m., Father Thomas returned, this time accompanied by Monsignor Paul K.,
We
the
have to act
diocesan
now before
liaison
it's too
for
late.
unusual pastoral cases. Monsignor Paul's report, later archived under restricted access, marks the first official ecclesiastical acknowledgement of potential preternatural involvement. Physical evidence suggests deliberate placement. Subject denies knowledge. Sigil unfamiliar. Name Zozo corresponds to references in 19th century French spiritist literature, associated with communicative infestation rather than possession. Monsignor Paul ordered the immediate removal of the items from the property and recommended the structure be sealed pending further assessment. However, before removal could occur, an incident intervened. At 4:18 p.m., hospital staff reported Megan screaming in her room. When they arrived, they found her gripping the bed rails, knuckles blanched, eyes fixed upward. She was repeating a phrase in a low voice. "You hear it once, then it hears you forever." Simultaneously, maintenance staff at the duplex reported a sudden power failure isolated to that unit. Utility logs show no external outage. When power was restored at 4:37 p.m., neighbors noted a strong odor of sulfur and overheated wiring, though inspections found no electrical faults. Forensic analysis of the parchment later revealed additional markings only visible under infrared light. These included date notations written faintly beneath the primary text. The earliest date read November 14, 1996. The final date read January 29, 2009. Between them were multiple entries, each followed by a single word, heard. No fingerprints were recovered from the parchment other than Megan's, despite evidence suggesting multiple handlers. Investigators attributed this to surface abrasion from the wax and cloth wrapping. By February 8th, the case had shifted. It was no longer treated as a psychiatric anomaly alone. The presence of ritual components, human remains, and a repeated name documented across decades prompted coordination between law enforcement and the diocese. The working theory, recorded in a joint memorandum at 6:12 p.m., stated that the activity was not spontaneous. Whatever Megan was experiencing had been initiated externally, deliberately placed beneath the structure, and activated through auditory engagement. The name was no longer considered incidental. It was considered a trigger.